Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Ted Davies Artistry. Today, we are Comics Unlimited podcast. But first, I want to tell you a couple things about what we're going to be talking about today. Um, we all had, I think, we have some idea of artwork in our lives, whether it's in the masters, Picasso, you name it. You might be a Dago Rivera fan if you're from Detroit. He's very, very big here, especially the DIA. Or maybe Claude Monet was your ticket. Another great one. One of my favorites, Van Gogh. Brilliant, incredibly tortured mind, but what a brilliant, brilliant artist. I think that we deal with a lot of our reality in life, especially as we're young kids, by seeing these works of art. At least I did growing up. And one of the modern masters that we're going to be talking about today was Jack Kirby. There is Jack Kirby. Two of the books that I was lucky enough to have as a kid, it changed everything for me and brought me into love of robots and machines and everything else, was because of this guy. He was a wizard, and this was his magic wand. He took this with a piece of with a piece of paper and changed the world, changed my world, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's sit back, put your belt on, and let's learn some stuff.
Welcome to the Comics Unlimited podcast with your hosts, Glenn B. Fleming and Ted Davies.
I still love that intro. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. What a great voice. I'm Ted Davies. I'm an artist and author, comic book artist and author. Who are you, man?
I'm Glenn Fleming, and I'm a writer, artist, and publisher, and document maker, and interviewer, and researcher, and tea maker.
Master of all, I think.
Yeah. I don't know about that. Jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah.
We want to thank the Rising Tide Broadcast Network for bringing us on their as affiliates. Check out everything we're doing at Rising Tide Broadcast Network. Thursdays are kind of nice because it starts out with comics with us and the history of comics and just comics in general, the common ground for comics, right? And then it finishes off the day with Comic Book Spectrum. So it's been really, as far as comics goes, that's a great thing. We're really looking forward to everybody joining what we're doing on the Rising Tide Broadcast Network, especially on the Facebook page. Check out everything that we're doing 7 days a week. We would appreciate it. So, I mean, there's a lot going on right now. I wanted to, I really wanted to talk about the effects of who this gentleman was, of our lives, how many generations he, if you want to say, infected with his genius. It's changed it's almost like Star Wars in a lot of respects for me and my generation, what Kirby did. So, but I want to talk about, do you know much about, since you wrote a book about him, we're going to talk about that, but do you know much about him in the younger years as he grew up? Do you know much about that side of him?
Only that he was born on the Lower East Side of Manhattan at a time when walking down the street was pretty dangerous. He told me that it would be nothing for him to have 4 or 5 fights on the way to school.
Yeah.
And sometimes against he was Jewish.
Yeah.
The next block were Irish, the next block were Italian, then the German and whatever. And there'd be fights. I guess it was like streets of New York, gangs of New York, but maybe not as violent when Jack was around, or maybe it was.
Yeah.
But he told me that he didn't mind getting into these scraps because he was a tough guy, and I think he quite enjoyed a fight. And he had a little brother, and his brother, he said, was really good looking and blonde hair and all this kind of thing. So he would attract these thugs, and Jack would wait round 3 or 4 paces behind him round the corner and wait for them to start pushing his brother around so he could wade into them and he'd knock them all out. So he was tough guy. He was a tough guy,
That's cool. I don't think that's a bad thing. And you got to be in that type of environment. You got to be tough. You have to be.
Well, yeah. Well, what he did when he was about, I think he was about 14 or 15, he went for a walk up to 42nd Street, which is probably a couple of miles away from where he was, and he saw all the ladies of ill repute and the, all this kind of hanging on the street corners and all this kind of thing. And his mother said, "Where have you been? Where have you been all day?" And he said he sort of he matured and grew up. And no, I don't think he was visiting these girls, but he saw, he realized what was going on. This was past his friends, and he would just go for a walk. He said he saw the Empire State Building going up, and having read about
that must have been incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, as an architect, I can't even fathom.
They were completing a floor a day at one point.
It's insane.
A floor a day.
And the safety factors. There wasn't any OSHA back then. There was no, regulate. I mean, there were certain regulations, but these guys, you see the pictures.
Yeah,
you see the black and whites of these guys that are up there with the wrenches, and I'm like, God, that's the era though that he lived in. This was his reality, that nothing was impossible. Really,
that's right.
I mean, even though he had these restraints,
and then later, as he says on the film and in the book that I'm about to release, he tells you the story. I should give this away, but I will do, because it's brilliant and what we're talking about. His friend, who was older than he was, could fly an aircraft. So these are little biplane thing, and,
paper.
And with two open seats, he was sitting in the back, and he flew over the Empire State Building upside down, and he was flying over Manhattan, which I would imagine you can't do before 9/11, certainly not now. But he was doing that when he was about 15. He's flying upside down.
So what year was he born? Was that
1917? So that would be what, 1930?
All right, so it's
1933, something like that.
During the Depression, just getting out of the Depression. Depression ran from what, 29 to, what was it, 35? I want to say.
Was it that long? Was it 32? I'm not sure.
I mean,
it would be during and after it.
Yeah, my parents lived in that area. My dad was in Wales during that time, but my mother was in Indiana. And it was cool to see that. I didn't hear that smart comment.
That's near Manhattan, Wales.
Yeah, right. No doubt. I said it because it's near you. Anyway,
I know.
Back to me. So, when my mother was raised in rural Indiana, that was like the Dust Bowl. I mean, there was a lot of things going on then. I mean, it's like a third world country, I would think, back then, on a farm during the Depression in
like
middle
the
of the
grapes
Midwest.
Are rough.
Yeah, man. Right.
That kind of thing.
Right. So do you think that those bouts, everything that he went through, and that he had fun though too? It sounded like he was a hoot when he was younger. I think he would be an absolute blast to hang out with. But
he said he saw all the gangsters on the corners.
Yeah,
and these gangsters weren't really sort of Al Capone, but they were tough guys in the neighborhood, and they weren't that much older than him. They're only 20, 21. And he said that everybody used to admire them or admire their suits. They all used to wear, $1,000 suit in 1932. I mean,
right. Well, they were trying to be made. I mean, that's the thing. They're trying to be made men, and that's not an easy thing in that structure.
He said that it would have been as easy as anything to go to that side, because those guys use guys as runners, and take this over there and all that kind of thing. He saw one of his friends was doing this, and he saw that his friend, when he was 15, he got shot in the head, killed. And he lived in the same tenement as Jack did. I think it was on Norfolk Street. And he went home. He saw this, and he went home, and he saw how the guy's mother reacted, that he'd been shot dead, and he couldn't do that to his mum.
Right.
So
he went agony. Yeah.
He couldn't put his mother through that, because he loved his mum and dad and all that kind of thing.
Right.
And he couldn't put them through that. I don't think he was thinking of going to the other side, so to speak, but it was there. It was easy money.
And you see that, and you hear about it all the time like that. But movies like The Godfather and that type of thing, you see some small part of the dynamic of what the allure. It must have been, because you're living in a tenement. I mean, these are not easy times to begin with.
No,
you have many family members in one small apartment. I mean, it's got to be, and to see the lavish life some of these guys, what you think they're looking like.
I think he was did he attend the Pratt Institute of Art something for a day? And one
I
of the
think he
reasons,
did.
there were two
Right.
reasons why he left. The main reason, excuse me, the main reason he left was because his father lost his job and he had to go and get a
Right.
job, bring some
Right.
money in. And the other one was that he didn't want to draw the same thing 15 times. They had to draw this head in this class and from different
Yeah.
angles, and he didn't want
He's
to do
like,
that. He wanted,
yeah.
I've drawn it once, so I don't want to do it again, you know.
Mhm.
Which is quite remarkable in a way, because he went on to was it Fleischer and did was it as an
Right.
in betweener for Popeye. But even then, he wasn't drawing the same thing. He was doing the in between pictures, you know, the pictures that move from the main frame to the next main
interims, yeah,
frame.
right.
So
He, and that's one of the things about I compare myself, and I shouldn't, with him in a lot of respects when it comes to piano or guitar, or because I didn't take any lessons, formal lessons, but
mhm.
I can't read music, but I can play music by ear. So, and I understand the frustration. Artwork, it's a little different. I mean, you have to learn certain techniques. You know that, about, the tech pen, everything that you and I, even the generational difference between you and I, we
Mhm.
still learn the same technique, I'm sure,
Yeah,
with pen and ink,
yeah,
and you need to have some structure. So for
yeah,
him, that just makes it more of a genius
yeah.
mentality for me. I would consider him a genius, and
Yes, I do. Yeah,
um,
I think another part of being a genius is like with you mentioned Van Gogh and people like that.
yeah, yeah,
Um, it's the fact that although Van Gogh, I mean, the famous story of him never selling a painting during his lifetime, but he was
sure,
still quite well known around.
sure he was.
And I
Yeah,
think, and people like Leonardo and people like that, the genius thing is later, I think. How can I explain? You need the talent and all that kind of thing to produce the work, but it's the longevity of it that defines it, I think. And we still talk about Leonardo now, what, 500 years after his death,
right,
and we
right,
will in 500 years from now, because
yeah,
his work is so good. Well, you know, the Beatles' work is so good. Uh, Mozart's work is so good. You know, we'll always talk about those people. And Jack Kirby is one of those, because even though you might consider somebody like, say, off the top of my head, John Buscema was a better artist than Jack,
hmm,
we don't talk about him as much as we do Jack.
yeah. Well,
So
and
that's where the genius lies, the
interesting,
longevity.
interesting too is that um, these books, the ones that he was a writer on both of these,
Yeah,
and when I was a kid, I didn't care. I was looking at the artwork, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Because I was a
yeah,
kid. I was
yeah,
learning how to read. These I got these when I was 6 and 7, I think, or 7 or 8. Uh, so with him though, the ultimate storyteller, really. I mean, I know it's not and I consider Mike Mignola my Kirby in my generation, but Kirby really, even Mike has talked about that in other interviews, how Kirby influenced him completely.
yeah.
Um, the storytelling with Van Gogh and with Diego Rivera, Picasso, all these people, I don't think the one thing about Jack that I respected a lot was he's a family man, and I learned that
Mhm.
from you because I've
Yeah,
been privy to a lot of the things that you've actually offered a lot of information for the movies, and full disclosure, for so that I could be part of this venture with you. But his storytelling, so the full gamut of what he did, I don't. I think it's being recognized now, and that's one thing as artists. I think that we're not really we're looking at we're looking at people that it affects 20, 30, 50 years from now. I
yeah,
don't think Van Gogh had that vision, but I can see that with us because of our long after we're gone, the stuff that we're doing right now that's on the internet, everything else that's happening will still
yeah,
be playing. You know
yeah.
what I mean? It'll still be relevant, hopefully. But the artwork, especially, I mean, I don't think that Jack knew exactly what he was. I know he was trying to get a paycheck and everything else.
I,
But go ahead.
I really don't like that comment that he was just putting food on the table. Of course
I
he was.
agree. I agree with that.
Of course he was. But that
Yeah,
wasn't
I
why
don't
he
like
was
it
doing
either.
it.
Yeah,
I mean, you could even argue that he was doing the best thing he could to get the most money.
hmm.
Just as an aside, the singer Dusty Springfield,
Hmm.
right? Well, she sang because it was the best way to make the most money.
Yeah,
She didn't dislike it, but she didn't have the passion to be a great singer, but
yeah.
she was. So that got her the most money. So if washing dishes would have brought her more money, she'd have done that. We'd
She
never
would have done
heard of
that.
her.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that's the same thing with a lot of people. Like, you know, I don't put myself up there with Van Gogh or anybody like that. But I've always done this. It's what I've always been heading for this. And when I've not seen people from school for 15 years, they ask me if
Yeah.
I were working in art, because it's
Yeah.
all I ever did.
Right.
Just from being a tiny kid, it's all I ever did. I saw
Yeah.
those Eagle comics with Dan Dare and all that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then branched into Jack Kirby and all that. But it's, you see, this, I've said this before, and I get into trouble for this, but you know, I really don't care. It's called talent, and because if people think if you practice something, you'll do it. Well, like I always say, and it's really boring, but I'll say it again, I've been singing for 60 years now, and I still don't sound like Marvin Gaye, and he's been dead for 20.
Yeah.
So where's the talent? I don't have a talent for singing.
I mean, you can copy. We talked about this too, that you can copy a style. Each one of us as artists, though, we do our own unique thing. I know that digitally you can copy a lot of things now, and there's probably an easier way to do things. But we're the only ones that can create from our point of view. And that's exactly what Jack did. He didn't. I mean, I'm sure he was frustrated with a lot of people through his career. But I think that there's something to be said that, you know, we learn the humanity, and I really think it, like I said, genius is a great term, because I think that we learn a lot about our genius too, because I think each one of us have a little bit of spark, you know, whether it's hatch or whatever, you know, there's all kinds of things that are very unique to us as artists. We've got a few artists in the queue here too. Damien's in here. Carl, Ryan, thank you for sharing this out, and everybody. Willow, hello. I don't know. It's cold up there in Canada, boy. It's cold here. It's about 12 degrees right now, but the sun's
12
shining on the lake.
degrees. Wow.
Yeah. Well, this is
that's
Fahrenheit
summer
too,
where I
bro.
live. Wow. That's summer where I live.
So, Donna says hello to you, by the way, too.
Yes,
Got
hi,
a full
Donna.
house.
I feel a lot better, thank you.
Good. I'm glad you do. I know that there's COVID's reared its head over at your place, and it's not an easy thing. So I'm glad
Still
you guys
here.
are. Yeah.
Everyone's
Well, I
now.
think the numbers are showing right now. Just on another note, the numbers are showing a little bit of leveling right now here in this, at least here. So hopefully we're getting to the point now where we're, you know, getting somewhere. So hopefully it's a good thing. But yeah, good health to everybody.
I think with Damien's comment there, one art class in high school, the last one, it said, I understand Jack's problem with art classes. I only took one art class.
Hold on.
I only took one art class in high school and had the same problem. I taught myself. That's right. And I think that's what happened to me. I think I've mentioned this before. When I was about 12 or 13, we had one art lesson a week at school and 3 geography lessons, and we had to learn French. So they dropped the art instead of the geography. And I could never work out what was going on there. Now, it didn't affect anybody else, and I don't think it really affected me, but that's not fair, you know? So I didn't. And then when I went to art college for 2 years, I learned how to drink beer and have a good time.
Sure.
I didn't learn much about anything specific while I was there, other than what I could do, which was illustrate and write and things like that. But we didn't sit down and talk about those things. We were just given silly projects to do, like design an LP cover, and everybody thinks they're going to be designing an LP covers for Elton John, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying it's pointless, but I don't think people like us really learn a lot. I mean, there were some people there who learned a lot. If only that they learned, they shouldn't have been there. You know, because
I mean, there's got to be a certain structure to way that we learn, and I think everybody learns differently. I could I'll tell you right now, I've learned more in the last 2 years on YouTube than I think I did in 7 years of college, because of the way it's structured. I'm a visual learner, and glad both my parents are gone now, because after hearing that, they're like, after the money that they spent, and I look at that as an opportunity to really utilize where you're going. You know, a direction. It's kind of your true north in a way, to find out exactly the compass of how you should be maybe pushing yourself, if you feel like you should be. And that's what I told my kids too. My daughter's more of a, you know, medical. She had to do school because of that type of field. My son's different though. He learns differently. It's a structure thing. But I don't think that talent is wasted if you're going to school. It can be stunted sometimes. I
Mhm.
think that some teachers can, and everybody here, I'm sure, can agree. You all had great teachers, and we've all had crappy teachers.
Yeah,
Ones that inspire, ones that don't.
yeah,
And I know you did. I know that I did. I had some really great teachers, though.
yeah.
One of which was my dad, and that's a big part of this. I mean, being an artist's son was a different dynamic too. That kind of set my. Even he said though that you can't make it as an artist. And that and that kind of floored me
That,
because I'm like,
that's what
you're
my mother
doing
said.
it. You're doing it. You've done it for the last 40 years or 30 years at Ford. You raised a whole family on being
Yeah,
an artist. So
yeah.
how can you say that? Um,
Well, my mother was the same. She told me I'd never get a job doing this,
yeah,
And I think she meant comic books actually, and she's probably right. Although I have been paid for doing comic books, so she's not completely right. But my mum wasn't really very nice anyway. But my dad was great because what my dad would do, he would never put me down, never put me and my brothers down. Um, he would always advise the best he could, and he would certainly encourage as much as he could. But I think that's tempered by the fact of him, being on D-Day and thinking life's too short to be worried whether your
right.
kid's going to be
That's
whatever your kid is. They can be whatever they want as long as they're safe and happy and this kind of thing.
yeah.
I think I mean, I told you before, he was 19 when he jumped out of that plane, so
Right.
he hadn't done anything, and he was jumping out of a plane to kill people. And I think that later on, when he had me and my brothers, he thought, "No, this is nothing can be as bad as jumping out of that plane," you know.
W
And I
What do you
think I think
think?
that's great.
Yeah, I think absolutely, and I think that my parents had a different perspective on it too. I mean, my dad was in the Blitzkrieg, and the bombs were dropping, and his
Yeah,
whole class got killed.
wow.
If he hadn't have stood by that bomb that went off, that didn't detonate when it dropped,
Oof.
he and his friend Owen were the only ones that survived.
Oh,
Just
God.
because they went to school, they walked off, and it was in the middle of the road. It went off and killed everybody. If they had been
Wow.
there, I wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
So I mean, their perspective on life, um, just having a steak alone was epic for my dad. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because the rationing, everything that happened. So yeah, I get that. Do you think that now Jack drew before he went into the war, or did he draw after?
No, he was working when he went in 1943. He was probably working 6, 7 years before he went in the army.
Okay,
He created Captain America before he went in the army.
okay,
He created Captain America with Joe Simon in 1941.
okay.
And before that, he'd been doing lots of cartoon strips under lots of different names. So yeah, he was almost a seasoned veteran artist before he went in the army at what, 25, 26.
Okay.
He'd been working that way because he had the best. They were selling 1 million copies a month. Captain
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that he and Joe Simon were splitting 50-50, $500 a week
Wow. Back
in
then, holy
1940.
cow!
That's a lot of money, isn't it?
Hell yeah, it was.
That's a lot
Yeah,
of money, and he was 23. You know, and as
yeah,
I said to people about this, putting this food on the table, of course he was, but he was fortunate. But I'll tell you something. I went to his house, only one of his houses, but I went to the house in California, and he must have been putting some nice food on that table for living in that house. I could live in that house. It
yeah,
was absolutely outstanding, beautiful, beautiful house. So he was doing really well. So he wasn't just hacking his way through. I think he was a visionary and everything. Because I think in all walks of life, you get people who are good at something, they just hack, like Dusty Springfield. She could have done something else. She'd have done something
yeah,
else.
yeah.
They were in it for the money.
There's got to be a balance too. I know that if it wasn't for Roz, I don't think that he would be as
Exactly.
focused in what he was doing either. And I think that gave a huge, and I give props to Christine because she does the same type of thing. She's
Yeah.
very much get this done. This is where you need to be.
Yeah. That's
And
what
that's
Helen does. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's
Helen,
and exactly. And I
she
think
affords
that's
me that. She affords me a big luxury, of which I
my.
can never repay her.
I agree,
You know.
100%. I'm the same, and we are very fortunate when it comes to that. I think that you need to have that support. If you're a single person or whatever, that's fine. But your spouse really does need to support
Yeah.
you.
Well,
I really I see that countless times that people don't have that, and it's it's such a blessing.
well,
Um,
you know the story that Helen and I met a long, long time ago, and we got back together again 15 years ago, or 16 years ago.
yeah,
And since that time, even though I've always worked in this art thing, since I met her again and we got together again, I've not done as much artwork as I have since we got together, and I've not done as much artwork again since the pandemic. All these podcasts, all these people like you that I've met, and all this kind of thing, and then friends, all this kind of thing. I've done so much work in the past 2 years, you know, and it's just incredible. And I'm really grateful for that, you know, to the universe or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's an amazing thing. And I'm just trying to get as much done as I can, you know.
Sure. And I think that we should. I mean, there's got to be, you got to rest too, though. You see what happened when you overdo it, right?
Well,
but I think that, do you think that Jack had, if he hadn't met Roz, do you think it would have taken another? Because he was already established. They met.
I think he would always have been a comic book artist because he was before he met Roz. So I think he was always destined to be that. You know, obviously he wouldn't have been tempered if she hadn't been there, but by her if she hadn't been there. But who knows, if he'd met somebody else, he might have done greater things. Not taking anything away from her. We don't know. So I think that, but they were a real partnership. They were solid. They were solid. And as I've said before, you know, Jack was a tough guy, but you had to get through Roz. And I tell you,
she was a gatekeeper.
But she was. I have to say this. She was an absolutely beautiful woman. And I mean that inside and out. She was absolutely brilliant. She was great with me. She was fantastic. She had no reason to be like that.
No,
I'm just some guy who came around. But she was so warm, and he was as well, but in a different way. But she was a real. She was a real woman, a real mother, female. You know, she was absolutely brilliant. I love her. She's a fantastic woman.
That's awesome.
I wish I could have seen her a lot longer. Yeah, she really was lovely.
Well, I mean, you can keep the thing going though. I mean, this is good because you're doing a lot for the, even though you're doing a lot for the family, for the memories of it too.
Yeah, well, the book is dedicated to Jakob Kurtzberg and Rosalind. I've forgotten her name. What her name is? Goldstein. Got it. It's dedicated to Jack and Roz.
When did do you remember did Jack ever tell you how old he was when he started drawing?
He didn't mention that to me, no. But he was going in the he used to draw on the walls in the tenements. Didn't get the super had come and complained to his mother that he'd drawn on the walls and things like that. But I think we've probably all done a bit of that.
Yeah.
But he'd be about 8 or 9 when he was doing that, I think.
Graffiti, yeah.
Yeah. And then he started going to the cinema because the film talkies were just starting when he was about 10. And so we got James Cagney and all these people, and that was his hero. And he'd go and watch the films three times a day.
I can see a lot of Jack. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And his mother used to go and drag him out of the cinema, take him home for dinner, because he'd been there all day, watching the same film 4 times, you know. Brilliant.
Damien said that my art teacher was great. She understood that I needed to go beyond the curriculum and let me, a rare event in my educational years. And I think that's, you know, we have always advanced classes in English that I had, or advanced math, whatever it was. I don't think that we ever had an advanced art class. I don't think that they ever offered that.
No, that'd have been
Isn't that something? Yeah. Wouldn't that be something?
I do think, though, there'd only been me there because nobody else was interested in art. They were more interested in what I was drawing than what was on the shelves in the shop.
Yeah. And I agree. I've had the same experience. Thank God, because what a cool experience to have, that people actually, you know.
I was sitting in the class one day, and the girls were going through this. They wanted to redesign the school uniform. And I thought, well, I don't care about school uniform. I didn't wear a school uniform. The girls did, but I didn't wear one. And then all of a sudden, one of the girls, Lois, and she's sadly just died recently. Lois said, they just turned around and she said, and we want Glenn to draw it for us. And I'm thinking, and I'm looking around, you know, thinking, what me?
Thanks. Yeah, right.
So I had to draw it in chalk on the blackboard.
It's like, you know, and I've used this analogy before. It's like you're the only one with the pickup truck and everybody's got to move.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's being an artist. You know, my kids have asked me that for years. What's it like, you know, doing it? If I said everybody needs a sign done, everybody needs a tattoo done now, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Jack felt that way too. Jack, marketing wise, can talk about the relationship with Jack and the other gentleman that had there was a taller guy involved in all this, and
That's Joe Simon.
okay, so talk about Joe a little bit.
Well, when Jack was working for, I think it was Will Eisner. I'm not sure. He was. It gets a bit mixed up there for
Another
me.
phenomenal artist.
Yeah, another brilliant artist, writer. Yeah, he was. I think it was around that time, and he met Joe Simon in the office, or the studio, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe was 6'3", really imposing. Always had a suit and tie on, really smart, and was very articulate. Mm-hmm. So and Jack was, in his words, was just this runt who sat in the corner and drew. So what they did, they obviously got on and became friends. And what they used to do was they would come up with books, ideas, characters and things. And Joe Simon would go to, say, Martin Goodman and pitch it, and Jack could just stay at home drawing. Jack could do all the drawing, and then Joe Simon would pitch it. So that's why they split that money 50-50, because Joe was placing the work and Jack was doing the work for the most part. Joe Simon was a good artist as well and did a lot of work on artwork, but his main job at that time was to go out there and pitch it, because he was this guy, and like I said, Jack said he was just this run, so that's the way that worked. And then they came up with Captain America because they knew that they were going to be in the war. Jack Kirby and Joe Simon knew that at some point they were going to be in the army.
Yeah, the whole era was
as a lot of people did. They were just waiting for it. So they wanted. So they came up with Captain America. They wanted a symbol of American liberty and all this kind of thing. And they came up with Cap, and they wanted the perfect villain. So as you know, there's that famous cover of his smacking Hitler in the face. And this is that came out a year before Pearl Harbor.
Right.
So the America was obviously on its way to war, but not near war at that moment. And then that was against the Japanese as well. So, but Hitler was the bad guy at the moment.
There was kind of a shout out though from like DC and was it who? Let's see, Marvel obviously, but they were trying to structure a little bit of military prowess though in the books. They were doing that. They were marketing wise, because for the troops too, they were trying to get it to keep their. The comics were a huge thing for these troops that were overseas.
I think Will Eisner, I think Joe Simon did as well, but I think Will Eisner used to draw how to keep your rifle clean and keep yourself clean, little manuals for the soldiers and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I think Stan Lee was involved in that as well, doing some writing on that. Stan Will and Joe didn't go overseas. Only Jack went overseas. And that's why I guess that's why those war comics that he does are so powerful, and the other stuff, it's so powerful. Yeah. And those explosions he draws, I think those are real explosions. That's what he saw.
I think they haunt him. Yeah, or they.
Have you seen that picture that Jack did of the tanks where they're pink?
Oh yeah. Well,
that's what color apparently when there's all the ordnance exploding around it. That's what color tanks are. Yeah. Because of the metal and the explosion, they're light pink. I mean, only an artist would capture that.
Yeah, it was, and like I said, the perspectives, everything he drew, not all perspectives were right on his, but they worked, and that was, right. I find it's fascinating to me.
Well, I say this to people about perspective. You can get a ruler and draw perfect perspective and buildings and things like that, and it doesn't look right. But if you start to just misdraw that line, and there's a great saying. If it looks right, it probably is right.
It is right.
But if you distort it a bit, it makes it real, because there's only God does perfect perspective visually and architecturally, because that's the way it works. But if you're an artist, the so-called artist license, you bend things, don't you? I mean, look at the musculature that Kirby draws. Nobody has muscles like that.
No.
But he's showing power. And when he draws an explosion, it's like the world's blowing up. It's not like a tank blowing up.
And how many of the times, I mean, the Kirby crackle, I mean, it's in this alone, it's just a little tiny bit here, but man, it's a huge deal. I mean, and then trying to, you're become kind of a master in that. You've done a really good job when you're inking in that. I can see a lot of Kirby-esque movements in that, but it's not an easy thing to duplicate. I've done a few things where I've had to do some Kirby crackle in that, and it's fun, but it was so precise. Even I always, and I really looked at Captain America's uniform because of the scallops in it. You
Yeah,
remember the scallops on his
yeah,
shoulders
yeah,
and it's so unique. I
yeah.
don't know where he got that idea from because
Well, it's chain mail.
right. And but I'm thinking he looks kind of it looks like fish scales to me when I first saw it
Yeah,
as a kid.
yeah.
I
I
remember
thought that.
that
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm like, no, that's got to be mesh or something,
yeah.
right?
But
But yeah,
it's so he can move.
yeah, it's
So he can,
brilliant.
because don't forget, Captain America is one of the few so-called superheroes who doesn't have a superpower. He
Except,
he doesn't have a superpower.
yeah.
Except Black Panther doesn't have a superpower. He's just really fit. You
I
know,
guess.
he doesn't. Well, he doesn't, does he?
No, I mean it's like Tony Stark. Well, that's one thing I like about
Yeah,
Marvel.
but Tony Stark
It's
Tony Stark doesn't fight people. He puts his Iron Man suit on, so
yeah, well, that's I'm
that
yeah,
becomes his
right,
thing. You know.
right.
So, but yeah, Kirby stuff is like you say with the Kirby crackle and everything. It's everywhere. I think I draw a really good Kirby crackle, and I don't think it's easy. You know, I
No,
think
I
I
don't
draw a
think it's
really good
easy. I
Kirby
think you do a
crackle.
great job with it.
Yeah. I love using that.
What was your favorite the Kirby series that he drew over the years? What was your favorite?
Well, I think the Eternals was going places, but he never got to finish that. So I think probably the Fantastic Four
Yeah.
from sort of 66 to 68 before he was obviously leaving and not putting as much in it as he did before. You know, the Galactus thing and all that kind of stuff, Black Panther and all those Claw, the Master of Sound and all that stuff.
Yep.
A favorite of mine of Kirby from that time would be the Cocoon when they get Alicia. You know, have you seen that?
No.
Well, they changed it to change his name to Him. We've seen Him. There's a guy called Him. Well, what they did was just.
Wait, no, yeah, I have. Yes.
What they did in the Fantastic Four was these scientists kidnapped Alicia, Ben's girlfriend, who's blind, sculptress, and they created this life, and it was in this cocoon. And every time they sent somebody in to see what it was, they went mad. So they sent Alicia in because she couldn't see, so she wouldn't know, and they wanted her to carve what she felt. Anyway, it came out, and it was like a god. It was a guy, and it was called Him, and that he was even more powerful than Galactus. This guy,
yeah,
and they threw it away. They just
That's
totally.
a shame.
They just
There's always got to be a bigger fish, right?
The dialogue ruined it because he changed the story, and because he can read the story in the notes on the side of the artwork, and it's not what you read in the comic. And then I think it was Jim Starlin got hold of him, and they turned him into the Warlock. They turned him into a superhero. This guy was a god. He was a god.
That's a shame. I
And
don't know. I don't like. Yeah, I don't like that.
Jim Starlin's great, but he should have left that alone. Jim Starlin's great when he works on other stuff, but to bring a god down to a mere superhero to me is wrong. But that period there from say 65 to 65, let's include the new gods, 65 to 72 is probably Kirby's best time.
Yeah.
Fantastic Four, 45 to 102 when he left. And then Captain America in there and S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that kind of stuff, you know. That's the best time.
I want to say good morning to Eric Hawkins and from the desk of a small press publisher. Hope you guys are doing well. Eric said that the Kirby Crackle is hard to draw. It is. There's something about, you would think that these ink blotches would be easy. I mean, you could see it somewhat, not even the shading in the background that we have there. That's some of Kirby's work. It's the format's, it's so sporadic, but so contained. And that's what I really had a hard time.
I think this is just my point of view. I think a major problem with people when they draw Kirby Crackle is they use a template and they make all the little circles perfect, and they're not.
Yeah, and they're not. I want to shout out to everybody too. If you guys could like and share this, thank you. If you have already, we appreciate it. I have a question for the audience though. Hey Brian, how you doing? Brian K. Morris is in the house. Is anybody seeing the Eternals? The Eternals that's on Disney right now. A lot of people have been I don't like it, and that's fine. One of the best things about it is they gave it basically a shout out to Jack in the these stories are based on Jack Kirby. I'm paraphrasing, but it was right there, and I'm like, I watched it at the end. I'm like, holy crap! And Chris is like, what? I played it back. I'm like, look at that. Look what they put Jack's name there. It was awesome. That was
Brilliant.
really, really cool. That was really cool. Yeah, that was pretty neat. So, but yeah, I'm geeking out a little bit here, but
That's all right.
anyway, what do you take from all of it? All the drawings, all the stories, meeting Jack and Roz. What do you take from all of it? What
I,
makes you still smile about all of it?
I feel really blessed that I got to meet him and to meet him twice.
That is
but especially to meet Roz, because Roz was absolutely brilliant. And I went in there, the story, I couldn't speak for half an hour, and I was about 33 at the time, so I wasn't a kid. And I had lunch, and he kept asking me who I was and why I was there and what my name was.
Yeah, right.
And
break the ice a bit. Yeah.
And then Roz was she was lovely. She was just a lovely woman. She was, and that was the biggest. Later, that was the biggest part for me.
Yeah.
The way that she was although she wasn't there all the time when I was there, but she was, she stayed in the kitchen or whatever she was doing and all that kind of thing. But the first time I went, I was talking to her, and we weren't talking about artwork. We weren't talking about, Jack Kirby. We were just talking, and she was just really special lady, really lovely. I wish everybody could meet her. She was a really lovely lady. I've never heard anybody say any bad word about her.
Was there any time that you felt like she was a gatekeeper a bit with you?
Yeah,
like you said, you stepped over your bounds a little bit, or as far as Jack's work or anything like that.
But she did say to me as we went through, she sort of pulled me back. She said, "You won't be talking about Marvel, will you?" And I said no. And she wasn't asking me; she was telling me,
Yeah, no,
but only because it caused Jack a lot of stress and stuff like that. Not
sure.
I don't think it was a legal thing at that point. She was, but I wasn't going to ask him anything anyway. If you watch the film, I don't ask him a question. I let him talk, because he liked to talk. He had his stories, and I knew that for the duration of the film, or the duration of me being there, which is a lot longer than the film, because the film ran out. I should have taken another cassette, but I didn't want to impose and all this kind of thing. He had all these stories. I mean, you've only got to look at his work to see all the stories he's telling. Well, he's just full of stories, and he likes to tell a story. So I didn't go. I don't like interviews where they go, what's your favorite color and what size shoes do you wear, those kind of thing. I don't like interviews like that. I like natural talking.
I agree with that.
And a good interviewer to me will direct the interview, but will let the person speak. Because some interviewers, as you know, on these talk shows, it's about them and not who they've got on.
Oh, it's all about me. You know that. I mean, it's and you're kind of like that too, though. You take over the show.
Is that right?
Not really.
Well, you are on the show with me, Ted, so.
we've got a question from Jody here. Question for the panel: why do Fandom favor Kirby's Marvel Comics work over his DC work? That's a good question.
I would say because it's probably his most creative time at Marvel, plus the artwork with Joe Sinnott and Grant Giacoya was the best rendered artwork. That would be my opinion.
That's fair.
As good as Mike Royer is, because Mike Royer, I have great respect for Mike Royer's work. And he got to letter it too,
Yeah.
I think that Joe Sinnott is Jack Kirby's greatest inker. That would be my opinion. And I think before Joe died, they should have given Joe all the old books and to re-ink.
You think so?
The entire thing was by Joe.
You're going to go on record to say that. That's your statement.
That's just my opinion.
Okay, no, that's good. I'm digging that. I would rather that's one thing about you that I don't think I've ever asked for, but you've always given is your opinion. So that's good. I'm just teasing. Anyway, so anybody else jump in about any of the movie on the Eternals that you guys liked or disliked? I know Damien said that it was great, but it changes are the first. Yeah, and I agree with that. At least, and it might be a larger plan. They might have a few things in the works. I can see one of the coolest things about right now is the streaming, the underlying stories, everything else that's happening. at least with Hawkeye and all these other things that are, I'm really fascinated with it all. I wish that one of the things that I think we need to think about doing for Brian K. Morris is getting him Disney Plus, because it is freaking awesome. We should take a poll or take a part of that Patreon and throw a couple bucks together so he and Cookie could have Disney Plus, because it's so freaking worth it. Between Boba Fett, I know we're off the mark.
Can
here,
you direct some of that to me, because I don't have it either?
Sure. Well, it's different in the UK though, isn't it?
I don't
Disney
know.
Plus is okay.
I've no idea.
But yeah.
I try and keep away from the TV. I try and keep away. I try and keep away from all this stuff. I try.
Brian says, and I don't blame you for that, but Brian says Jim and, well, excuse me, Joe and Kirby's best. That's, what do you think of
that? Well, the first bit's right.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
Bill Everett's brilliant, but no.
Got it. Okay. Oh, here we go. Eric's got something. Eternal was very boring. Okay, but it had, yeah, it did. Absolutely. It had all of her there. Yes, you're right. Oh, let me read that. She
We'll have to watch
the rancher's outfit. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't like about this show, though. She did, spoiler alert, if you guys haven't watched it yet, mute this out. But yeah, I didn't like her being dead. That was kind of sad. But
spoiler alert.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, we won't bother watching that now.
No, forget now. BKM, damn it. I need to get more work done because I have a damn broadcast network to lord over. Life is rough being the king, I guess. Okay, let's see. I'm going through these, but yeah, and I did come out swinging. That's right. That's right. You got to keep these Brits in check. Okay, hold on one second. I'm sorry, guys. We had a huge comment dump here, so hold on one second. Kirby resurrected a lot of DC's failing comics. To me, that is more creation than what he did at Marvel. Okay, I get that. What was the tell me about the DC, because I've been always into Marvel. I mean, I joke with Brian about, I'm a big fan of huge fan of Batman. Huge fan. I really, really love Batman. I've always loved Batman. Even Superman. I'll make a statement. I know I give Brian a hard time on that. Superman, growing up though, with the movie and everything else, that was very, Superboy, all that stuff was like, I was into that for a long time. But then, it got away from me. But Marvel has been, for me, and I know you feel the same way, Glenn. The stories are just, they seem richer to me. I don't know. There was something about it. I enjoyed the Green Lantern that for DC, but there's something about Marvel stories.
I never really was a DC fan. I only went to DC when Kirby went there, and I only bought the Kirby books. So I wasn't really going to DC. I was following Jack, But yeah, you're right. The stories are richer. There's a lot more. But I think that's because Kirby's there. I think, Stan Lee wrote great words, but we've done that debate to death. But I think those things were coming from Jack, because to me it's obvious, because when he left, the other guys didn't do it anymore, did they? And a lot of the time in Marvel, the people were drawing over Jack's layouts, so he was writing those as well.
That's true.
Those Fantastic Shields issues that Jim Steranko did, they're all mainly laid out by Kirby to start with. And there was a time, when was it? When Fury, when Agent of Shield first arrived, it was a different artist every month. I think Joe Sinnott drew one, John Buscema. I can't remember whether Decayers did one, but there were different artists on that series, but they were all on Jack's layouts, because he just didn't have the time. Because Stan Lee said that if he could have made a day 90 hours long, he would have just had Jack Kirby draw everything. So that tells you something, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Joe says, and I know Joe's a huge fan of DC, so him making a statement like this is pretty strong.
The thing with DC with me was when I was smaller, when I was first getting to Kirby, and I used to look at, I never bought them, but I used to look at my friends' Green Lantern and mainly Superman, and it was Kurt Swan drawing Superman. Now, Kurt Swan, I think, is a great artist.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah, I agree.
But he's very tame. When Superman would punch somebody, he'd sort of just tap them and they'd fall over dead. But when Kirby has somebody punching somebody, they leave the galaxy. You know, the power. There's no power in Kurt Swan's work, even though his work is great, and I do love his work. But Kirby brought a lot of power. I think just raw energy and power.
I agree with that. I agree, and even the picture behind us. Yeah, I mean it's incredible, incredible. Yeah. So Ted, if you want to read a good DC story featuring Jack Kirby, then look for the graphic novel Hunger Dogs. Okay, I will. I'll get on Amazon and look at it.
Have you not got that one?
Do you?
You never read that? Have you not got that?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, right.
No, okay. I haven't.
Here's another one you want to get then. I've got to pull this out today from the archive.
Apparently Christine's home. Sorry, guys. Just don't bother with the dog. Don't worry about her. 2001. Okay, cool. I didn't, and is that an annual? Yeah, it's an annual, right?
It's a special.
Yeah.
1976. It's got some fantastic artwork.
That looks great for 1976.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's Kirby, you know.
It's almost 50 years old.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
You know,
hold on, let me bring that up. Hold on, let me bring it up. Oh, that's freaking wicked. That looks so good, man.
That's where Dave Bowman's coming back into, you know, when Hal won't open the door and all that.
Yeah. 2001. Let me write those down. You guys are just, I'll let Christine know that she's got to buy me these things.
Look at this one.
Is it called 2001 or what is it?
Yeah, it's 2001 Space Odyssey.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Official adaptation of the film. It's the Marvel Treasury Special, 1976.
Yeah. Okay.
Look at that.
Amazing. And at this time, he's how old? In 76. He's in his
76.
50s.
He would be
late 50s.
59.
Still knocking it out of the park.
Yeah. Just
That's
absolutely
awesome.
Incredible.
Okay.
It's a great book.
I'm going to check that out. And it said Hunger Dogs, right? That's the other one.
Hunger Dogs, yeah.
Hunger Dogs. Okay. I'll check that out. All right. So, Brian, I'm sorry. Just give me a second here, guys. When Kirby went to DC in 69, DC did have continually, but each editor's universe, not the comics across the board. Okay. Well, I mean, what's nice about it is that we've got opinions that are wavering, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it was 1970 when he went, not 69, but but then he's coming up with this. This is the second best comic book ever written.
All right, hold on. Let's pull that one's Glory the one that you really. That's the one I know that you've got this.
And you'll never guess what happened on the splash page. There you go. That is fantastic.
You got to get that thing wrapped in plastic, bro.
I mean, you got to look at it. You got to enjoy it.
Come on, man.
But look at that. Look at that. Who can draw like that?
If you could have Helen just put me in the will about that book, that would be awesome.
Look at that.
I appreciate that.
Especially awesome. Especially this one here, where we'll be going there. Look at that. Absolutely.
Now, do you think that it's the ink, or do you think it's Kirby? Do you think it's the ink that's stating the obvious movement in that, or do you think it's Kirby?
Don't forget the ink has to have something underneath it. So all the inker's job is just to make it legible for printing, really. Unless you've got an embellisher, I suppose. But don't forget. Don't forget. Joe Sinnott.
Yeah.
Joe Sinnott was an embellisher. He would put his expertise onto the artwork.
Okay.
Kirby got a bit fed up with that, because he as good as Joe Sinnott was, you know, he was sort of disguising some of Kirby's artwork, only a little. But he told Mike Royer, don't change anything. So what you see in the Mike Royer books is Kirby. Okay,
that's awesome. So, I didn't know that. Okay, so, that's cool.
As good as Mike Royer is, because I love Mike Royer's work.
Right,
he's a brilliant inker, and he's a true professional because he followed the brief. I'm sure he could have changed a lot.
Sure, he could have. Well, yeah, he would have last stamp on, I would think. Another good oversized Kirby book. Brian says one shot was Captain America's Bicentennial Battles. I remember that one.
That's one with it's got Barry Smith inking a couple of pages, hasn't it? Got different people inking pages. Fantastic.
Yep. These ones here, I pulled it up on Wikipedia because I never looked it up on the Black Panther. Who do you think did the inks on this? Come on. Who do you think, Glenn?
I can't see
think
I can't see. I'm on
sorry.
I'm on the screen.
Maybe if I learn how to broadcast here. Okay, so who do you think did that?
Who inked that?
Yeah.
It's probably Joe Sinnott.
Okay, let's see. Let's see.
But it will say Mike Roy inside, but it might not be. It might be a Sinnott cover.
Lettered and inked by Mike Royer. Royer, sorry.
Yeah, that's the inside. But if you look at the other covers, sometimes it's a Kirby Sinnott.
Is it? Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. I think, well...
But I will concede it's Mike Royer, but, it might be Joe Sinnott. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's good. And as far as... did you guys anybody like Black Panther or Machine Man growing up? I don't know. You probably didn't. I don't know. Did you? Or did you even...
Yeah, yeah, I did. Of course I did, yeah. I mean, even when you see Devil Dinosaur, I mean, it's...
Oh, yeah.
That's a bit crazy and for kids, but that was supposed to be an animated strip because DC were doing, I think they were doing Superman and Batman. Marvel wanted to get into the animation area, so Kirby came up with the Devil Dinosaur for the kids, and it's not the best thing he ever did, but it's reasonable. It's better than some people do, and the artwork is just great because Mike Roy is there again, and
Mike did this one too, apparently. But yeah, I've been a big fan of Kirby since I was young, but I just didn't know it, And you go through life, and that's I think that's the beauty of collecting too, because there's covers that we're going to be talking a little bit about Frank Miller in the next show, and there's covers that I didn't know Frank did long before The Dark Knight that I enjoyed. I loved it,
Sorry, go on. Come
on. But just to put a feeler out there, so you guys are a teaser out there that you guys are going to be.
One of the greatest things about Kirby is his mind must have been on overdrive, because he comes up with guys like this that I think he only used twice in the entire series. The Mantis, look at that.
Yeah, that was wicked.
Look at that.
It's cool.
And he's such a fantastic character. That's Mike Roy again. He's such a fantastic character, but I don't think he's only in 2 issues for about 3 pages,
Yeah.
And this is what Kirby could do. He had all this stuff, and like we said earlier, he didn't like to do the same thing twice. So he would just bring in some character just to do something for a few panels, and you think, wow, where's this guy come from? And then he's gone, because his mind must be just churning it out all the time.
Do you think that he ever had writer's block? Maybe that's why he brought in these characters.
No, I don't. No, but I think that's another thing that Stan Lee did, was sort of rein him in a little and control him. That sounds not. I don't mean that to sound as bad as it may do. He put harness on him to slow him down a little, because he just used to tear it away. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing.
No, and I think that you have to have some direction. I don't think that that's, especially when you got to build your company. I mean, I get that. Because some of us, we get off I think that's the hardest part about being an indie publisher and author in that, or artist, because you want to try something new, but it's hard because you're directed a certain way, and and it's not easy sometimes.
I think that's what happened when Kirby went over to DC. I think Carmine Infantino was responsible for taking him over.
Yeah,
and I think and I might be wrong, this is just my opinion, but from what I've read about it, it seems that Carmine just wanted to get Kirby over to DC, but when he finally did, he didn't know what to do with him. And the New Gods were going places, and
what was the reasoning? What happened? Did he get fired or what? Well, I never
DC.
Followed that. Yeah, what happened when he went to DC?
I think he got a bit cheesed off, as we say, about the way that he was being kept back.
Okay.
And making him do different titles and they made him. They did what Marvel did to him. They put Deadman in there. They put the characters in there, and I think they were doing that to sort of claim it for their universe thing. I think he got. I don't know. I just think he liked the Marvel thing, because when he comes back and does all those Machine Man and Eternals and all that kind of stuff, he seems to have a freer reign. He wanted to go, and they let him go finally.
That's tough. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there was some money involved, I would think. You think there was?
Well, I think he got a fantastic page rate when he went to DC. So, and he was writing them as well, so he was getting double the pay. So, money's always involved, isn't it?
Sure. Well, I mean, sometimes it can be bad, sometimes it can be good. It's what
Yeah.
you do with it. It's what
Yeah.
you do with it.
Yeah. Money's not evil, is it? It's people.
Yeah, right. I shouldn't have said anything about Frank Miller. I've got everybody typing everything about Frank Miller now. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next. It's going to actually be a recorded show because we got a few things happening next week. Family coming up and that, so I'm not going to be able to. I won't be available Thursday, so we're going to do a recorded show. But you guys can tune in on that. What was one thing that you could take away from with Jack Kirby's art? What would you tell everybody if there was one thing you could to sell Jack Kirby's art? What would be it? What would be the thing that you would tell people has never seen it before?
A character, you mean? Or I'm not quite sure.
About his whole
about how good he is.
Exactly. Like how would you explain to people who Jack Kirby is if you were telling somebody that's not an aspiring artist but somebody that really wants to read comics?
Well,
What would you say?
He's the quintessential artist, isn't he? Writer artist, and you would need to read. My favorite Jack Kirby piece of work, This Man, This Monster, fantastic for number 51.
You love that
because
one.
It's perfect because everything going on, but it's down to his storytelling. He just knows how to make a story work, and there's little subplots in there, and there's little things in there, and he's a master at that. Never mind his actual artwork, the dynamic artwork. It's his storytelling, and that's the key to any comic. Because as you know, it's without the words are scenery. It's just the names of the guy. You don't need to know the name of the guy. It's the action, and you pick that up from this going to the cinema, watching the silence. The silent movies, because they tell a story. There's no words. And then the dialogue would come along, and Jack's dialogue's a little off. I think it's not the best dialoguer, but it works for his work. But I would say look at his storytelling, the way he approaches a story, and the way he executes the story, because it's second to none. With Steve Ditko coming a very, very close second. And these are true artists. These know what they're doing. These people know what they're doing, and they know how to slow the story down. They know how to pace it up. They know how to have a quiet moment. They know how to have a fight in it.
Sure.
But it's.
I'll let you read that one.
I'll watch the show next week and make comments, knowing I can't be corrected by Glenn. Well,
yep, me too. I'll do that too.
You're always correcting me, Brian, aren't you? So I'm correcting you on that one.
Jody says, Ted, if you ask me the question, I would say pay attention how he draws the scene to make the story flow from panel to panel. Yeah,
that's
and I agree with that.
Yeah, storytelling.
Yep, and it is. I think that and I said this before, art is subjective. The storytelling is the key. If you've got the right story and and you're
if you notice sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you get I think it's Tales to Astonish that Captain America was in, when it was a 10-pager and a 12-page. Tales to Astonish, yeah. Well, it might be Tales of Suspense. I'm not sure. Tales of Suspense. I'm not sure. If you look at the Kirby Captain Americas, one month they're 10 pages and the next month they're 12 pages, depending on whether it was the lead story.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at them, he always starts with action.
Yeah.
Like there's one, I think he's called the Tumbler, this guy.
Grab you. Yep.
It comes, the first of the splash page is Captain America going like this, and this guy's coming like an acrobat. He's upside down. He's coming through the glass, and it's all shattering. So you're immediately there, and you go, wow. Whereas another person might have had 4 or 5 pages of the Tumbler saying, I'm going to get Captain America and drive into his office and then jumping through the window. You're right in the action, and that's a great way of beginning a story. And the reason he did that, that's right, Tales of Suspense. The reason he did that was because he didn't have time to tell you how the guy got there, because he only had 10 pages. If he'd have had 20 pages, he might have told you that.
Stretched it out. Yeah.
But he banged it right in there. And that's storytelling. It's just absolutely incredible.
Jody says that would make Kirby so great. He makes dialogue easy to other writers. Okay. And and I get that. And the volume of work, though, I mean, he's cranking these things out. I mean, how many hours a day? 15 hours a day he'd work?
Gotta be. Yeah, I would say so.
And then I know that you're going to like this comment.
He did the same thing with Mr. Miracle.
You like Mr. Miracle?
It's all right, yeah.
Okay, that's good. I thought you What was the one I thought you liked, Mr. Mirror? Wasn't that, or there was another one that you liked a lot?
Eternals.
It was
From
Eternals.
that period. From that period, yeah. But I think he was held back in there as well, because they had him putting the Hulk in, didn't they? And he made it a robot, didn't they? And this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just think you should just let him get on with it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and just let him roll.
Yep.
Speaking of which, I think we're going to get on with it here. We've been over about an hour, so that was a good show. That was a real good show. I think that hopefully answered some questions on Kirby Who, because I think that there's it's not just one story. It's one show. This is obviously with everybody on here today. It's we just scratched the surface. We'll have to revisit Kirby. Tell everybody about the book, and then we'll do the.
The book is finished. The DVD is finished. Just yesterday, sent off for some proof copies just to make sure it looks and feels nice.
Okay.
And I'm going to start my my crowdfunder again, Indiegogo again, in February, which is another week. I'm going to get it all ready. I'm probably going to do another intro film thing, that kind of thing. Get it all set up, and I'm going to launch at the end of February.
Right. And then we're going to have you on TED Talks March 1st. And then
so I'll be
proper,
so I'll be putting it about where I'm going to be and who I'm going to be talking to and what I'm going to be doing in there. I'm looking forward to that, because I've obviously dragged over now from last November, all the reasons for that. But yeah, it's going to be all right. It's going to be
good. So. Yeah. But I think you got to the point now where you've got to put it out. And I know it's going to fund. It'll be fine. I wouldn't worry about I know there's a lot of people are looking forward to it. And of course, we got Comic Book Spectrum tonight at 7:00. Shameless plug from BKM. That's good. We'll see everybody tonight on that show. Then we also have, let me see what else I've got here. I wanted to talk a little bit about Drinking with the Davies tomorrow. We've got, what is it called? It's called the Blue Freeze. Figured it's a good one.
It's called The Craziest Podcast Online. That's what it's called. That's a subtitle.
I'll let Christine know that. I'll let her know
Absolutely
that.
Brilliant.
It's her show. I'm just spoon boy man, whatever it is.
It's just the best. It's just so funny.
It's because of her. And then we also have From the Trenches of Hollywood that's going to be loaded or downloaded tomorrow. We've got a really good interview with a director of TV. You guys need to check out.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah, looking forward to that.
Really, really cool gentleman. I think you guys are going to dig him. So, but that fascinating stuff on how they write for TV and how all that culminates. Again, stories. Whatever podcast that you're on this station, you're going to see a lot of different things about story creating, writing, how people do it, how we do it, how writers that have affected us in life and made us, I think, better for it, made us think more. But yeah, there's so much here. So I appreciate your time as usual, man. We always have a good time here. I mean, this is comics is everything.
That's flown past, hasn't it? Wow, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we appreciate everybody stopping in. Thank you, and check out everything that we're doing here. Please like and share if you haven't already. We'll see you next week on the playback. All right, thanks again, guys. We'll talk to you.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.
Welcome to the Comics Unlimited podcast with your hosts, Glenn B. Fleming and Ted Davies.